everyone has the exact same needs. Like we seem to forget we're all human. We all are trying to navigate relationships, our bodies, work, friendships, all of these different things. And while we may have different like upbringings and ideologies as a result of the environments that we live in, we actually all have very similar basic human needs. And it's really cool seeing people from like literally completely different places in the world like help each other out or like answer each other's questions, and it doesn't matter where they're from or like if they think differently.
Welcome to the Bountifull Podcast, where we explore what it means to live a bountiful life. Today, we're thrilled to have Emma Bates join us, a dynamic entrepreneur, community builder, and founder of Diem. Emma's journey has taken her from the UK to New York City, where she's built a career focused on empowering women through community and conversation. From studying war studies at King's College to founding a platform that bridges the gender information gap, Emma has been deeply committed to creating spaces where women can find support, share their stories, and gain access to the knowledge they need. In this episode, we'll dive into Emma's background, her passion for making a difference, and the inspiration behind her latest venture, Diem. We'll explore what it means to live a bountiful life through community, connection, and meaningful impact. So Emma, welcome to the Bountifull Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So do you want to share just a little bit about your upbringing and your background?
Yeah, so, I mean, where do I start? I guess my upbringing, as you can probably tell from my accent, I grew up in the UK, and I moved to London, into central London rather, to go to university. I went to King's College, and as you had mentioned, I studied war studies. And while I was studying war studies, by the name you can probably guess, is quite an intense degree. And I was writing my thesis on gender and sexual-based violence in regions of conflict. And I really just like needed a place for my brain to operate that like didn't think about any of that. And so I started a blog, and that blog grew to hundreds of thousands of readers over a couple of years while I was still studying. And it was really where I like discovered my love for marketing off of, I guess like the love of marketing really comes from a like deep fascination with like human psychology and therefore consumer psychology and marketing being applied psychology and all of the things that sort of like come into that. And that was really, where I learned everything I know. Well, not everything I know, the start of everything that I know. And I went on after graduating to go into startups, which took me to New York.
That's exciting. Why war studies?
Great question. The degree, like the course itself is very like prestigious. I think there's only like 50 places a year, and it's kind of like everyone from all over the world, like diplomat children, like people from like different countries. And you just like learn in a way that I didn't really know was possible to learn at university, and that we had like full on like spies come and give us lectures and like, it was sick. Like the stuff that you would learn was just like you had Chatham House rules for a lot of lectures. And it was just like so fascinating to learn about like history and politics and international relations and psychology and conflict resolution and all of these different things all at the same time. Like I've always deeply loved history and politics. I was very good at them at school. I was like, because I was obsessed with them, while I don't necessarily like read up on wars in my free time, like I am like genuinely very passionate and interested in like international relations.
Is there a part of you that goes, well, where we are today is because of where we've come from, and sort of having an understanding of how all of the like puzzle pieces fit together and how complex systems work? Is that like one of the things that kind of drives you?
Yes, 100%. I think that, I don't know if this is something that I learned via the degree, but I would say that I have a pretty good sense of, like, I don't get stressed by short-term things. And I think that when you have learned about like where we come from, the things that have led to today, it can help just like ground you in perspective. It's like I think in this world of social media and like instant gratification and like comparison, we kind of like forget that the world exists in a lot of ways. And I think that we forget that we're part of a larger system, we're part of a community, we're part of a human species. And just like remembering that sometimes when you lose perspective and you're like really, really stressed about like one thing that is completely insignificant in the grand scheme of things, really, really helps.
Love that. So we're here on the Bountifull Podcast. What does it mean to you to live a bountiful life?
A great question. I imagine for me it will change, but right now, bountiful is being able to do things that I love doing from a work perspective, and also just like surrounding yourself with people and experiences that make you feel full.
Do you have a world view, or how do you see the world?
It's hard to say one, but I just like, I know why we don't live in an equal society. Like the things that are on paper, but the thing that just like constantly like deeply irritates me is how ignorant a lot of people can be, and more in like when everyone has a place or everyone has equal opportunity, then like everyone benefits. It's not like some people lose out. And I just like find it so annoying that we're like increasingly living in a world in which like people seem to forget that.
Do you have any advice or thoughts on, at an individual contributor level, what an individual can do? Like, what could I do to like contribute to that equal future?
I think a lot of it starts with like how you treat other people immediately around you. And one of those things, I think certainly like as women, we are raised in a patriarchal society, and we do live in an environment where we're pitted against other women, against like, we have a scarcity mindset as a result of that. And we show up in spaces where we don't necessarily know that we're behaving in that way towards, say, other women. Like, sure, there are 100% environments in which there is only one seat at the table, but like really trying to like free yourself of that like internalized patriarchy or misogyny or whatever word we want to use. Anytime you like encounter it is probably the only thing we can do. Like, I'm absolutely not there. Like, there are certain things that I experience in life and I'm like, oh, that feels wrong. Like, why did I react that way? Or, and I think just like being open and curious and like asking questions or like being open to feedback is really important.
How do you see yourself?
How do I see myself?
Yeah.
In what context?
Any context.
I
start with a philosophical question.
Philosophical question. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if I have anything profound to share in how I see myself. I think I try to see myself, the Kamala quote that was going viral, where it's like, you live in context of all that is around you. Like, while it was like a very funny quote, it kind of is true. It's like try and see yourself as part of a community and not as like an individual. And I think that you just approach life a little bit differently.
What advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
My 25-year-old self.
Were you like right in your blogging zone when
No,
you
I stopped that when I was like 21, thankfully. So hopefully it's no longer on the internet. But my 25-year-old self, I'd say my 25-year-old self was on the right track. I started thinking more seriously about Diem when I was like 26. So keep going.
Awesome. We've kind of talked a little bit about this, but can you give a bit more detail on like what sparked your passion for making a difference in the world during your time at university?
Yeah, a lot of it was, so I started uni in 2012, I think, something like that. So what year? It's like 12 years ago. Yeah. That feels like a long time. I started, I guess while I was at uni, like the conversation around like gender equality or like feminism or equity just like didn't really exist. Like, I don't know if I just had blinders on, and there's a very high chance that I may have done while I was at school, but it just wasn't like we had Facebook, sure, but there was no like feminist movement in a honest, like the level that we see it today. Like, that conversation wasn't at all present, at least in my upbringing and how I experienced it at school and various other places. And so I think that when I was at university, it was when I first discovered, like, not inequality. I obviously knew that like the world wasn't an equal place, but it's where I first really, I I think like learned enough to be really angry about it. And I think that my thesis, I was one of 5 women on the whole course, and I chose to write my thesis in gender and sexual-based violence in regions of conflict, and I focused in areas also where like peacekeepers had been sent, and just like learning about how deeply flawed, how like sex industries had often been created by peacekeepers or by regions of conflict, and what that means for like the women and children living in that space, or that society, was enough to like make me want to, they barely left my room. I was like so like both like sad but also just like angry. It was like really, I don't know, it was very eye-opening. And now obviously like the conversation, thankfully, people are far more aware. Like maybe they're only aware of like it in the workplace, but like that's better than I think it was in terms of how many people are talking about it.
Yeah. What were you writing about where you attracted hundreds of thousands of readers?
I think it was just like the early onset of like influencer like world, and so people would read anything. I don't mean to sound it like I'm doing myself a disservice, but like I really don't think it was very interesting. It was like kind of lifestyle adjacent is probably the best description, and some travel stuff. I got to go travel to countries for free, which was fun, and great when you are a student and have no money.
Yeah, awesome. So it wasn't like a feminist blog or anything like that. It was just like lifestyle.
I did, after I graduated, with a couple of friends, I think it was around the time, I can't remember, it was around the time of graduation, I started a movement which was originally called the Unidle Collective, and then was changed to be called the Pink Protest. And that was more of my like first foray into internet feminism, at least.
Do you want to talk a little bit about like some of the startups you've worked with? Obviously, I mean, one like Away swept the interwebs. I think D2C brands in the last 5 years have had just like such a tear. And it's almost like the world discovered the internet after so long and actually started doing stuff in a way that was like actually cool, not like the 90s. So yeah, what was that kind of like? So the first, I guess like Away is probably the most exciting brand to talk about that I worked for. I joined the company in 2016. I think it had been around for under a year at that point, and there were 10, 12, something like that, employees. And I initially joined to help them expand into the UK. And then after a couple of months, I went to the New York head office and worked on all types of marketing, whether it be brand marketing, partnerships, experiential at one point, kind of like everything that would just be in charge of getting the Diem name out there, not the Diem, the Away name out there. It was really insane. Like it was the 3 years of hypergrowth where we were like, I think when I left there were maybe like 400 employees. And that was between 2016 and 2019. And it was just like an amazing learning experience. I think that one thing that people don't talk about as much when you work in startups is like, sure, you might be asked to do a lot because like you might be the only person doing your job, but actually what the value of it is just like what you learn via osmosis. Like I had no idea about venture capital before I started working for Away. I had no real idea about like how growth marketing intersects with brand marketing, like all of these different things where you just like by being in the room with everyone, you learn all of these things from different people and about operations and like product development. And like, while I'm not an expert in any of them, I did see it happen. And so I'm like, oh, okay, like I vaguely know the right thing to do if I were to move forward with wanting to create my own thing. And that I think is very, that's very rare that you get that experience in other workplaces. Yeah, I'd agree. So getting into Diem, let's talk about that. What is it?
What is it? Well, we get described as two things by the people that use Diem. One is either an app that feels like a girl's bathroom at 1 a.m, at a nightclub, or it's the front door to girl internet. Either of those are quite like, I think, emotive descriptions, which are probably will lead you in the right direction. On a technical level, we are a social search engine. So you search via Diem. Diem is trained off of the conversations of women. And so you get a somewhat more inclusive or relevant perspective to you as a user. And then you can socialize your search by posting it into relevant communities for people to weigh in live. So you get that like validation piece as well as the facts.
What is the gender information gap? Because that's kind of where... Can you talk about the journey to Diem? Like, how did you sort of land on the idea and like the hypothesis and then kind of start building it out and now got quite a tribe behind it?
Yeah, so we originally started after like this sort of inspiration behind it was when I had to take the morning after pill for the first time and basically just ended up trying to find, like when I was searching the internet, it basically felt in direct contrast to the real world, like information sharing I know to exist amongst certainly like girl group chats. And I was like, why can't I find people's stories when I'm searching? That's all I'm looking for. I don't trust like some random forum, but like I want to feel as though
it's like WebDB or something.
Yeah, WebMD, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, why am I just reading this? I'm like, I know what the side effects are. I'm trying to like understand the other stuff, like the everything around the side effects. And that was like the initial genesis, was just like, okay, well, why can't you search for community stories? Why can't you get both? Why can't you have the facts? Why can't you have the validation? And then Diem started initially as like, it's always been about like searching communities. So we started it as like community forward. It was very centered on like female health to start with, those types of communities. And then as the community grew and the beta community grew, people started talking about everything else. Yeah. And so that's when Diem became everything else. So now you can do anything from like money questions to self-confidence, pop culture, health, like really whatever you want to search for answers on, you can do in Diem. But yeah, that was the initial idea.
How is it going so far?
It's been very stressful, but it's going well. I would say it's going well, like net positive. We started really pressing play on growth towards the end of last year, and we've had like around 70,000 people join. We've had really crazy retention engagement metrics, which for anyone in tech, they'll know how important those two numbers are. And more than anything, it's just like really cool to see people like ask the exact questions that you like thought they would want to ask. And you're like, oh, like we might not have like full product market fit, but we certainly have elements of it. Yeah. And that's very rewarding.
Can we talk a little bit about safe spaces?
I would actually say that like now more than ever, thanks to the internet, it's possible to find spaces where you feel seen and heard and represented, and as though you can find people beyond your immediate communities, at least if you really want to, like there's probably something there. I think it's definitely in like the real world off of the internet, it feels a lot more scary. But I also think that's due to the internet. So I think it's because we are like so aware that people have different opinions to us, or so aware of like various like threats to democracy, let's say in the US, or threats to women's rights, or all of these things. And the reason that we are so much more aware of it is because of like the news being at our fingertips in a way that it never used to be. And so I don't know whether there is actually less safe spaces or whether there's the illusion of less safe spaces, but I do completely agree the need to be able to find like internet communities or places online, places offline to like feel fulfilled. Like I think community is health so much of the time. Like there's so many data points around how people are healthier when they're less lonely. People navigating like pregnancy, navigating any type of like literal health experience or change in life experience, you're so much better off with communities. And I think that by the nature of like businesses cottoning on to the concept of community for like profit, people seem to have forgotten what it actually means and why it's so important. And I hope that with like Diem, while we are obviously a business, we're a tech platform, I hope that we're building the tools that can like bring like people together and connect with others that help them through like navigating life's experiences.
What does community mean to you? I mean, you've obviously got a background in community building as well. That was one of your startup jobs, but then you've also done like a lot of research and whatnot on like different types of communities globally and how they function and thrive and maybe not thrive.
Yeah. I mean, like from a brand perspective, or if you were doing community as a job, community is connecting your audience together. It's not about talking to them. And that I think is a great description for like how you can think about community in the real world, is like spaces or experiences that provide like rife ground for common conversations or discussion. I think that we're really scared of having different opinions from others, and that's really dangerous. Like if you don't talk and converse and discuss with people that don't think the same as you, then like we're only ever gonna like break apart potential communities. Like you could have had the exact same, I don't know, I keep referencing health experiences, but like let's say you had the exact same health experience, but like one of you wants to vote for Trump and the other one doesn't. You're not even going to talk about your common ground. And I think that's like, that feels really wrong. I'm like, we need to like try a little bit harder to at least not like jump down each other's throats.
You can learn something from everyone, and if you think you can't, then you aren't trying hard enough. Yeah, exactly. I think that we all have such shared experiences, and that's something that's been really amazing to see with Diem. Like we have Diem members like in over 100 countries around the world. And I often have had the question like, well, isn't that so hard? Like everyone has different experiences. And I'm like, no, everyone has the exact same needs. Like we seem to forget we're all human. We all are trying to navigate relationships, our bodies, work, friendships, all of these different things. And while we may have different like upbringings and ideologies as a result of the environments that we live in, we actually all have very similar basic human needs. And it's really cool seeing people from like literally completely different places in the world like help each other out or like answer each other's questions, and it doesn't matter where they're from, or like if they think differently. From an entrepreneurship perspective, it kind of feels like you're taking on Google or something. Like,
that's the goal.
It's good. What do your investors say? Like, obviously you've capital raised, you successfully raised, I think like just over 3 mil or closer to 4. Like,
it's just over 5 now, exclusive scoop.
Congrats. You heard it here first. What do your investors say? Like, do they get it? Like, what's some of their commentary on what you're doing and how impactful it can be?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the questions or like the lack of belief come from those that haven't invested. I think that the ones that have invested for a number of reasons, whether it be in us as a team, whether it be that they believe that the internet is changing and people are seeking more like verticalized experiences online, whether they have like a deep sort of belief around like the value of like community data sets for the future of AI and the future of search. It's kind of an amalgamation of a lot of that. The part that I'm most excited about, to sort of your earlier question, which I'm now realizing I didn't answer, around the gender information gap, like the gender data gap is real. Like it's huge. It's in it like permeates absolutely everything that we do in the world. And the way that if you are in a group that lacks data and there is a vast gap, your experience of a lot of things is incredibly hard and very negative. And so if you can create ecosystems where you are collecting data, and not just in the form of like research, but like data exists in the stories we tell each other, in human experiences. And if you can have a place where that lives and is searchable and indexed and used for good, not just to sell you products, you can like change a lot of things, hopefully. And that's really where I outside of like obviously creating like cool new tech, like that's what really makes me excited, is like we have all of this like amazing like data that we can like serve back to the user in a really hopefully net positive way.
It kind of has some cool applications. In a way, I don't know if you were familiar with Monzo when it launched in the UK, and some of the conversations, they kind of went back to the retailers and were like, well, consumers want XYZ, why don't you do that? And so then the almost consumer buying power as a collective got better. Is there some things you're thinking about doing in terms of like getting better health outcomes for women, those sorts of things, without, I don't know, abusing their trust or data or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that it all comes back to consent. We're so used to existing in internet platforms or search engines or whatever that don't appreciate or like don't value consent. Consent was never something that they cared about at the beginning, and it remains true. And so for us, it's like any like possibility of your data being like utilized in any way, you will have to opt in to say, yes, I want that, or no, I don't want that. And we respect that, like whichever choice it is that you make. And I think that there's an amazing essay, I think it's called The Internet of Women, that was written like maybe like 10 years ago now. And everyone should read it. And it basically like likens how we think about the internet to how we treat women in the real world, and has lots of like really fun quotes around like, oh, we're just at home baking cookies for all these like tech billionaires when we're like being followed around the internet and all of this sort of stuff. But I do think it's true. I think that our lack of respect for consent, specifically around like female bodies, you can see the similarities in how like the internet has been built, and the lack of respect for like human data and privacy as a result of that.
So fascinating. AI is a bit of a buzzword lately. How are you using it, and what's your general thoughts on it as a, I don't know, tool for good? Something in your toolkit?
I think it's incredible. There's obviously, I'm sure, people will use it dangerously, as they use anything in the world dangerously. I hope that the people who are in charge are doing enough from a protection standpoint. I believe that a lot of them are. I obviously don't know for sure. I think that it has huge potential, not just from like the consumer application standpoint. Like we use it, Diem AI powers our whole search experience in the app. We've been building it for like 3+ years now. Also think like beyond that, there's so much that it can be used for, like pattern matching in disease, like being able to like solve problems that would take humans years or would be unsolvable to a human brain, can be solved significantly faster. And that has like huge impact, positive impact on just like the human race and, I don't know, longevity or anything along those lines.
Am I allowed to ask how you make money?
We don't make any money yet, so you're welcome to ask me, but I don't have an answer. We will be turning on monetization. It will be around, so basically the people that run the sub-communities you can discover via searching. We'll be building in monetization tooling for them. So whether that be like premium versions of sub-communities, whether that be like, we're calling it an ads network, but it's not going to be banner ads. It's more like promotional conversations that are relevant to that sub-community, and then the person who runs it also makes money from the placements. Things along those lines, which I'm excited for, because what we're trying to do with all forms of monetization is like the most engaged people within Diem also benefit and make money rather than just us making money. So really like building in subtle incentive structures that hopefully mean people can like earn a lot too.
I think that's really smart, because the nodes of the network is where the power is a lot of the time, because they're like the vacuum cleaners of their own community in a really positive way. Mm-hmm. And if you And a lot of those people do it as a side hustle.
Yeah.
And don't get paid for anything. So if you can empower them to do what they love, but they also get paid for it, like that really can only have additive benefits, I think.
Yeah. Hopefully.
That's really smart.
We're yet to test it.
Well, good
but
luck.
I feel good about it.
Yeah. Do you think you're going to see, and sorry, this is a bit in the weeds, but just out of curiosity, are you seeing communities move off places like Facebook and whatnot and like come into your system?
We are seeing that in the earliest phases, yes. Mainly Reddit, because like Reddit is, their active user base, I think, is over 70% male. And we have a lot of people join Diem and be like, I posted this in Reddit and I was like abused, so I wanted to see what people said here. Yeah. And so we are definitely seeing that sort of trickle over effect, which is really cool.
Can we talk about some of the surprises and delights? Like, what are some of the things that have surprised you about what people are talking about and maybe not surprised you?
I think the thing, I don't know if I was surprised by it, but it brings me a lot of joy, is just like how funny women are. Like, women are so funny and so witty and just like so self-aware in what they, like when they post to DM. Like, people will be asking like really serious questions. Like the one that just came to mind was when someone posted like 2 days ago and they're like, I need serious help with my smile lines. I look like a granny turtle. And I was like, what is that? And but like they'll just like make questions they're clearly like insecure about, and like you're obviously like being self-deprecating because you're like trying to deflect from the insecurity, but like they're doing it in such a funny and engaging way. And I think it just reminds me of how much of like internet language is actually like teen girl language, and how like a lot of like our evolution, like from a linguistics perspective, like the evolution of the words that we use online a lot of the time comes from women and other various like underrepresented communities, like spilling tea, for example, like that. Like it's just like there's so much internet language that is so like permeates everything now, and it often comes, you can trickle it back. Yeah, like it trickles all the way back to these communities. And I think that's really cool. So I wouldn't say I was surprised. It was just like something that like makes me really happy. Not surprised is how quickly people share. So people join Diem and on average they post to Diem in under an hour. Which if you're joining a community space, usually it takes people like weeks to or months to like even say one thing. And I think that is just like so accurate when you look at real world, like female communities, like a girl's bathroom, you are like complete strangers and you'll be talking about something and someone will weigh in. And like we see that in like the digital form in Diem, and it's really cool.
Any plans to move into offline community building, or are you going to leave that to the creators?
So we did, that was actually one of our growth strategies, like sort of do things that don't scale approach. We hosted weekly salons in New York, LA, San Francisco. We've done one in Paris. We've done them sort of all over. And those were 12 to 15 people hosted by someone like, not necessarily an influencer, but someone who wanted to gather their group of people together. And then they would post a question that they wanted to talk about into the Diem app, and everyone who attends had to like add a response to get to, as like their ticket essentially. And now we're scaling that beyond like being Diem produced events into like the community hosts or our ambassadors all around the world, like hosting these events in their local communities. So it's becoming less of a Diem owned thing and more of like a community owned like initiative that they can do.
Smart.
Like if I were to put my like user journey hat on, it's like you come to search, you stay for the communities. So the communities are those environments in which you could meet friends, whether they be digital or real world friends. I also think that like probably due to social media, we've kind of like forgotten the value of like, we don't have to be friends with everyone. Like, I think that yes, there is 100% a loneliness epidemic, but like some people just come into your life to offer you like one good tidbit and then they leave. And I think that like finding the balance of that is more possible in larger community environments rather than the sort of like, I'm going to go date a friend. Yeah. And I think that it's possible for you to find both of those connections in like digital community spaces that spill over into the real world. So like you could talk to someone online whenever you need a skincare recommendation, and like maybe that person then becomes a real world friend, or maybe they're just like useful and they're like, you're useful to them in some way too. So yes, I think that we think of connections in general a lot, and there's a lot that we're doing like feature wise in the product over the next 6 months that like enable more of those connections. But they don't always have to be like long-term friendships.
It'd be really interesting to measure people connecting, not necessarily finding friendship, and their like mental health or like contribution index or whatever you want to call it, where like if they contribute to the benefit of someone else every day for a month, like what is their like attitude or net positive, like, because as you said, you don't need a friend, sometimes you actually just need to connect, and like does that connection, even if in the form of like helping another just with some advice, actually contribute to you know, confidence building, belonging, all of those things, without having to find a new best friend. I think that from like, this is anecdotal, I want to do like proper research via the data we have in Diem. I would say it 100% increases confidence. Like we've had people directly say, like, I've been in Diem for 3 weeks and it's so nice to feel I'm not alone. I feel way more confident in like how I show up in the world, knowing that I'm not the only person, kind of thing, which is cool. It'd be great for people who think that they're the only one with this issue when they find, there's 100 other countries,
like thousands. No, we have a lot of that. I think one of the most fascinating Google stats for me is that 70% of searches that start with the words "is it normal" pertain to female health questions, and that's like insane. Like if that many people like genuinely believe they're abnormal just because they don't have access to the right like communities. Imagine how they'd feel if they did know that they weren't alone.
You kind of seem like you're building a company on your own terms. Can you kind of share a little bit about that for people who might want to be inspired?
I think there's only so much. As soon as you have employees and you have outside investors, there's only so much that you can do on your own terms. But I really am like very anti like hustle culture. I'm all about trying to figure out how to work smarter rather than longer, and hoping that by me focusing on that, it means that it like spreads culturally throughout our company. Obviously there's weeks or days where you're like slammed and you are working really late, but I really don't think you need to be successfse. And I mean, hopefully that works out in my favor, but it has for the last 3+ years. So I'd say like that is a big thing that I want to make sure that we.
Any practical tips on how you actually achieve that, like as a CEO and founder?
I'm trying to think what I do. I think it's about like, okay, if I'm stopping work at 6:30, you've got 4 hours. Like, just do the work. Like, stop like reading something online, or like you like, as soon as you like time box stuff more, you actually just do it. Like, you just get it done. And I think that like trying to be more efficient in that way, and like not having to like constantly check Slack, which is really hard when you're a remote company, or not having to like constantly check your emails and things that would like pull you away distraction wise. It's like, no, for the next hour, I'm writing this thing, or I'm doing this thing, or I'm like going to finish this spreadsheet. And that I think then enables you to be like, okay, well, it's 6:30, like, sure, I have like 500 other things to do in the next week, but like I could do 10 of them tomorrow, then I could do 100 of them on Monday. Like, I think it's like really just about remembering it's like not the end of the world, and focus on the work that like unblocks your team first, and then focus on your like thinking work afterwards.
Yeah. Creativity and motivation. You've mentioned that joy for you comes from being challenged and solving problems. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I get quite bored like if I am not stressed, I don't like being stressed the whole time. I think that's really bad for you, but I do like operating in like a slight amount of chaos, and like figuring out those, figuring out how to do it like really in a really smart way for not a lot of money, is like such a fun way. Like it's like my brain only thinks in that way. I think because I've only ever worked in startups, I've never had the luxuries of like huge budgets or huge like you can go do whatever you want kind of thing. You've always had, I think you're more creative when you have more restrictions. And so I think that's what I find most fun about it, is like I like a challenge where you do have the guardrails and you have the restrictions, whether they be financial or time or resources. And then like being really hacky.
This is a random question, but I mean, we're in New York, you've lived here for 9 years, you're from the UK, you've been around a lot of startups. Do you think is there any benefit from being in a place like this that has a lot going on building a business, being in this space, being a founder, etc.?
100%. The number of people and just like, but mainly the people, honestly, I think that it's just like unparalleled. Like there's nothing quite like being able to go and meet like someone who you've looked up to for like 5+ years for a coffee instead of like a 15-minute phone call. Like it really does make a huge difference. I think that being able to be immersed in the center of everything and tap into as much as you want of it and then go into your like work hole for the rest of it is, I don't think I could have done it anywhere else in the world. Like I think that like obviously San Francisco offers it from a tech perspective, like those like the engineers, the people who are like building the technology, but from like a consumer product perspective, like everyone wants to be in New York. And like the number of places I've been being like, oh, this area feels like New York. And I'm like, I'd rather just be there.
I had lunch like a street over and I just kind of giggled because I was way not trendy enough to be in the lunch place. But we
are in like basically Dime Square. Yeah. So
I was like, just booked venue. But these two girls were sitting there over lunch just having this classic consumer brand conversation on all of the things and like company culture and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, yeah. Like, welcome.
Yeah, it's so funny. I think that what's nice though about New York versus like a San Francisco is that people have different jobs here. Like I have friends who work in politics, in advertising, and like all these different worlds. And so you just have more perspective, I think.
Yeah, San Francisco, when I lived there, I found was great because it was a bit of a monoculture. Like it was all just like technology and building like software companies. But for me, it kind of lacked a bit of that like arts and culture. Like you really had to dig to find that stuff and like become part of the slightly strange underground warehouse community.
Yes. Yeah.
What, in your opinion, is the most underrated fruit or vegetable?
Oh my God, what a great question. Underrated. You know, I love peas.
Oh, me
I
too,
don't know if they're
actually.
underrated, but like they're the best. Like any type of pea, I'm happy with.
Not if you're English, but maybe if you're from other countries. Favorite cocktail?
A spicy mezcal margarita. Maybe with like some sort of passion fruit or something in it.
Worst meal that your parents made you eat?
Oh, I was spoiled. I have a Jewish mother, so she's a great cook.
Anything?
I guess actually I hated tomatoes, raw tomatoes growing up, and so sometimes they'd force me to eat tomatoes.
Yeah. Random.
Yeah.
Word that describes your life?
Organized chaos.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say that. What are you most proud of?
I'm very proud of the community that I have.
Sounds like you've tried really hard to build it.
Yes.
Do you have any tenets that you live by?
No, nothing other than trying to lead with kindness and understanding.
What's one thing that has really mattered in life that maybe you didn't realise mattered so much at the time?
It sounds stupid, but like time. I think that was one thing that I turned 30 last year, and I think I don't really care about turning 30, but when you have milestone birthdays, you are like, oh wait, everyone around me is also older. And so just like appreciating that time a little bit more than I think I used to.
Yeah. And then the inverse, what's something that you thought really mattered but actually doesn't?
What people think of you.
Yeah, that's always a good one. How do you stay creative whilst also managing the demands of running a high growth business?
I'm taking time off, or like I don't work on the weekend. Like that's my time to remember that there's a real world also.
Yeah. What do you do when you're in the real world?
Honestly, like I've actually gotten back into reading recently. I've read like 6 books in the last like couple of weeks. And so reading, or just like, I just like love people, like spending time with people that inspire me.
I heard of an event that happens in New York where you can go meet people and then you bring your book and you read your book. And so you get to like
go there.
Not network, but like have chats, read your book, have a chat, read your book.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
I don't know where that is, but I'd love to go.
I'll ask David. He was on the podcast yesterday. What's your final advice for like aspiring entrepreneurs? I know it's super cheesy, but like the reality is it's like you're living in one of the best places in the world to build a business. You're young and like inspiring, you've raised money in a really challenging time in the market. So what would you say to other entrepreneurs?
I guess like it feels as though there's lots to do, and there is a lot to do, but just pick the most important thing and do it first. And most of the time that's market research. Some of the time that's like, I don't know, starting a TikTok page and like validating your idea by just talking about it. Just like do one thing at a time. Don't try and do everything at once.
Last question, what is the dream? Like if you were to look at I'm going to make it like kind of Diem based, or maybe we could do 2. What's a dream? And then like, if the world was equal and Diem had achieved everything that it would, like what would society look like with women like thriving at their best?
Well, if all things were equal, Diem wouldn't need to exist. The dream for Diem is I do genuinely believe it can become a household name in the same way that like Google has. I want Diem to be how you search the internet with a community layer, and to feel less alone, to make the search experience online less alone. I think like that dream coming true, I'm then going to be really rich. And with that money, I want to invest in like women's health research and other things that I'm passionate about. And then I guess on a more like dream world situation, I just think it's like we don't recognize there are alternate forms of power, because the form of power that we all appreciate or have been told is important is money. And that was like a system that was largely created by men. But there are so many other ways that you are like powerful in the world, whether that be like carrying a child or just like building communities. Like I think that we only think of power as like a top-down approach, as in like I'm the richest and I have the most political power. And I just think if the world were equal, we would be celebrating other types of power. There would be different things to aspire to.
Can you share a few more different types of powers, so that maybe if someone's listening to this and they're like, I really want to hone other powers that I might have, make them, not to make them sound like superheroes, what are some of those like practical applications of that?
It's a good question. I think the one that's like now at the forefront, because I just said it, is like pregnancy and like having children. And like I don't know if I want to have children, but I think I probably will. But I think that it's we're told that it's like this really like negative thing because we have to like leave work, and like we're told to fear it for a lot of reasons. But like it's like epic. Like you're like creating a whole other human. Like there's nothing better you could do for the economy than like ensuring the economy exists into future generations. Like I think it's so weird to me that it's like financially penalized in a lot of ways. And also just like that you're creating like a family, you're creating community. I also think that just like genuinely like creating community is really powerful. And I think community, the word makes you think it has to be hundreds or thousands of people, but like 15 people, 5 people that you're like all meeting up and you're like talking about something, or you're doing an activity together or whatever, that's like incredibly powerful.
Yeah, love that. Thank you, Emma, for sharing your journey and insights with us on the Bountifull Podcast today. For our listeners eager to deep dive into Emma's work and her purpose-driven initiatives, we'll include all the relevant links in the show notes. I think if you are a woman, the first thing you should do is go sign up for Diem and get chatting, get asking all your questions that you really want to ask, but maybe you're too afraid to, or possibly embarrassed. Or just go check it out. If today's episode resonated with you, please like and subscribe and follow it along. This season is filled with extraordinary guests from diverse backgrounds, all having great chats, contributing to our exploration of what it truly means to live a bountiful life. So thank you, Emma. And
thank you.